Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Varan the Unbelievable and Tomoyuki Tanaka thinking on his feet.
That lake water's going to be contaminated after we finish the tests. It'll probably affect the fish, too. We just can't take any chances.
But those people have depended on their lake for their livelihood all their lives, and their parents before them.
Anna. Now, should we be this concerned about a handful of people when we might perfect something that could benefit all mankind?
Let's start with the positives. Varan is a very good-looking monster who can live on land, swim underwater, and glide through the air like 250-foot-tall flying squirrel. That's the unqualified good. The unqualified bad is that there are at least two versions of this movie, and the more widely available one, to me, is pretty lifeless. I have, up to this point, heaped some kind of praise on pretty much every movie that we've talked about. I can't do that for Varan. I've heard several other people who discuss this sort of movie refer to it as a film for completists only. Well, this podcast is called Record All Monsters, not record only the very good, or at very worst, stupid and entertaining monsters. So, here we are. Varan's origin as a movie really does explain why it turned out so dull, though. After Rodan had been so successful in the US, in no small part due to its television advertising campaign, an American production company approached Toho for a joint production to release a new giant monster movie straight to television over 3 30-minute episodes. Different sources name different studios as the genesis for this idea, but from what I can tell, it seems to have been American Broadcasting Paramount Theaters. The timing works out, and Kaiju YouTube superstar Up From the Depths arrived at the same conclusion as did the good folks over at Wikizilla, so I think I'll go with that, too. ABPT had been formed in a merger of the American Broadcasting Company and United Paramount Theaters as an effort from the two companies to bring Hollywood-quality filmmaking to TV. At Toho, producer Tomoyuki Tanaka decided that since this film was being produced for TV, it wasn't necessary to film in color, which had been done for Rodan, nor was it necessary to use their new Toho Scope widescreen process, as they had done for their alien invasion flick, The Mysterians, in which the giant robot Mogera debuted, before being seen again more than 30 years later in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. No, this was a movie for American TV audiences, and as such, the focus was on the monster more than anything. And as I've already said, Varan is a really cool-looking monster. Ever since the original Godzilla, Toho seemed to like unveiling a little twist during the monster's rampage. In Godzilla, it was the atomic breath. In Godzilla Raids Again, the death of Anguirus during the monster's fight. And in Rodan, the revelation that there are actually 2 flying monsters. Here, Varan lifts its arms like Rocky Balboa at the entrance to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and unfurls some flying squirrel-like wing membranes, jumps into the air, and floats away. This moment would be referenced by Guillermo del Toro 55 years later in Pacific Rim, when the kaiju Otachi takes off into the night sky over Hong Kong while battling gypsy danger. If that sounds like a whole lot of nonsense to you, how did you find this podcast? Welcome, pull up a chair, let's watch some movies. Shortly after filming had begun, the US backers of Varan pulled out, and Tanaka decided to release it as a theatrical film in Japan. Much to the annoyance of director Ishiro Honda, who was already feeling restless in his role as Toho's go-to monster movie guy. All of the film shot after Tanaka's decision was shot on proper widescreen cameras, and the footage that had been shot previously was cropped to fit into the cinematic ratio. So let's briefly meet producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, one of the forefathers of Godzilla. There isn't as much information on him that's easily available as there is for, say, Ishiro Honda, who we've already talked about some, or Eiji Tsuburaya, who I will gush over real soon, I promise. Tanaka was a producer at Toho beginning in 1940 and came up with the idea for the movie Godzilla in early 1954. He and the studio had been in negotiations with the Indonesian government on a movie about Indonesia after the Japanese occupation. But popular sentiment in the country was very against the Japanese at the time, so those negotiations fell through, and Tanaka and his crew were denied entry visas. On his return trip home, Tanaka recalled a news story about a tuna trawler being contaminated by radiation fallout from nuclear testing. He also recalled the beast from 20,000 Fathoms. This is a pretty well-known story, and I feel a little silly rehashing it here, but Tanaka was a titan of the genre, producing every single Toho monster movie from Godzilla in 1954 to Rebirth of Mothra 2 in 1997. He also served as the studio's chairman through much of that time. To not discuss him at all would be a gross oversight, and with Varan being a rare misstep for him in terms of quality, this seemed like a natural place to bring him up. Even though I call Varan a misstep, his decision couldn't have been an easy one, and the film serves as an example of his ability to think on his feet when something doesn't go to plan, just like he had done in creating Godzilla 4 years prior. He made the best of a bad situation and made something that could work, and you've got to admire that kind of attitude. Just quickly, at the end here, Varan was brought to the US in 1962 with a new human storyline built around the monster footage. And this is where we get the title Varan the Unbelievable, or Varan. The flying scene is cut from this version, so if the Japanese version of the film had been unremarkable, the US version was just as much. By then, the genre had moved on to the highest marquee value fight in its entire history. It seems like a lot of things about this one are unsomething. Unfortunately, one more thing it is unessential. But then again, at least the monster is cool.
When modern Navy scientists defy the unknown mysteries of the past, perpetuated by centuries of native belief, then nature strikes in all its vengeance in Varan the Unbelievable.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly. Welcome back to Record All Monsters, and we're very excited today. We're talking with author John LeMay. Hello, John.
Hey, Robert, and I love the title of your podcast, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It actually took a while to arrive at, believe it or not. Trying to get something that sounded right. So, John, welcome to the show. We're really excited. You are the author of numerous books, many of them sitting here in front of me. The big book of Japanese monster movies, Kong Unmade, Jaws Unmade. Was Jaws Unmade your most recent one?
It's the most recent, and it's been the most successful, which kind of surprised me because I would have figured there'd be more Godzilla and Kong fans out there, but apparently it's Jaws fans.
Well, it's a good book. I've been especially like the section on Great White, because that movie's always fascinated me. That's the one that Universal got the lawsuit through with.
Yeah.
But so, John, welcome to the show once again, and Do you mind telling us a little bit how you first got started with giant monster movies?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably similar to everybody else. I liked dinosaurs. That was the gateway. And I was born in 1985, kind of the era when like movies like Aliens were popular and stuff like that. And my parents didn't really want me to watch real bloody stuff, so they like to show me the old Ray Harryhausen Sinbad movies and Godzilla movies. And out of all the older stuff they showed me, Godzilla's are always my favorite. And for me, the Ian Thorne book was my Bible as a kid. That was the pre-internet age, and one
Hmm.
of the more interesting movies they mentioned in the Ian Thorne Godzilla book was Varan, which I didn't get to see for a long, long time. So I just wanted to mention that. But that was how my interest in Godzilla got started. Just my parents introduced me to it.
And how did that transition into writing about them?
So I started off writing history books because I live in Roswell, New Mexico, where the aliens crashed, and I'd done a town history book, and but I always, I love, real history and Western history, but for some reason, film history probably fascinates me the most, and just how films develop and how they compare to one another. So I started writing a basic guidebook for a company who I thought would want uh, a Japanese monster title in their lineup because they had books about kung fu and spaghetti westerns, and I thought for sure they'd want a Japanese monster book, and I sent it to them, and I never heard back. So possibly they never even received the package, but I just decided to self-publish it instead, and it did a lot better than I thought it would. I thought there were already so many guidebooks out there on these films, nobody would care to read a new one, but it did well, and then that led to me wanting to do more, which led into the Lost Films book, where I kind of delve into all the unproduced scripts that Toho and Dai had written for Godzilla and Gamera, and it's just snowballed from there. And I film history is really the most popular thing that I write when compared to like Western history and things like that.
Right. And once again, I'm just excited, so excuse me if I lose my spot a couple times. Um, but you've been a big source, since these books have started coming out. And what was it, 2015? Um,
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's 15 or 16. I can't remember anymore either.
but your books have been an invaluable resource for just a lot of people I hear talking about these movies now. I don't know if you're familiar with Up from the Depths on YouTube. I
Yep,
know they've used. I've seen your name in their citations before, and it's uh, that's got to be pretty cool to be having that kind of influence on this community.
I have to say that's probably the most surreal thing for me because I mean YouTube isn't exactly like television. It's not network television, but at the same time you can watch YouTube on your like big screen TV now. So yeah, I'd never seen Up from the Depths do it, but I had seen Wikizilla cite me, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was, and then they used a lot of your stuff for their most recent video with Monster Island Buddies too, I believe.
Oh
About
yeah,
specifically about Lost Films.
yeah, I really enjoy. Oh, I love that video. That was awesome.
And your love of Lost Films and the Lost Films book has spun off into a magazine now, right?
That's right. Yeah, I was just really bored during the quarantine, and I also realized other people were probably bored, so I was trying to think of just the cheapest, quickest way to print some entertainment. And there's a lot of lost film type stuff that I want to write about, but I don't want to write a whole book about them. Like I was really interested in the unmade Superman 5, but I had no plans to write a book on it. But I thought, well,
Mhm.
if I wrote an article and then I could have this little fanzine, so that's kind of how that happened.
And in transitioning from writing Western history and local history to film history, did the academic connections you had set up and the kind of weird West credentials help with the lost genre films?
No, but I do think it's really funny that I can use the same universities for both because I use Brigham Young University for one of my history books, and it was also Brigham Young that had the Marion C. Cooper papers that I used
Yeah,
to write the King Kong book. So
that's pretty cool. So we're here today to talk about the movie Varan the Unbelievable from 1958. And I thought of you as a guest for this because you are, the Lost Kaiju Film Authority, and Varan has been in so many Lost projects. So you mentioned earlier that you had not seen it until much later. When did you see it, and what did you initially think of it?
Yeah, so Varan again was in that Ian Thorne book. They didn't have any pictures of Varan. Well, actually, I guess they had a picture of Varan via Destroy All Monsters, but yeah, Varan was probably the most mysterious monster in the world to me out of the whole Godzilla stable. And that's because, Varan was only in two movies. And I mean, Varan the Unbelievable was out on VHS, but in a little town like Roswell, the odds of getting that particular VHS were kind of slim. And I remember I had to get Varan in Dallas, Texas at the Suncoast Video. I was probably 10 years old. Just to backtrack again, though, Varan to me was in two Lost movies, the other being Destroy All Monsters, which, again, back in my day, wasn't available on VHS unless it was bootleg.
Right.
So I would say my expectations for Varan were probably kind of high. And Varan the Unbelievable, the US edit in particular, is just an awful movie. It's kind of boring in my opinion. So I love the design of Varan, though. And then, to kind of pour salt in the wound was watching that American edit of Varan for the first time. You don't get the great footage of him leaping into the air and flying, which is probably like the coolest scene in the whole movie. And I have no idea why they wanted to cut that out of everything.
Yeah, the American edit, that was actually the first one I saw because it was more widely available through Amazon, and after I watched it, I realized I couldn't write 3 pages for the essay portion of this show on that movie, so I had to find
That's exactly right. Yep.
the
There's
other.
just not much there to it.
Now, so to my knowledge, you're the source for most people who've come up finding that American Broadcasting Paramount Theaters was the initial U.S. backer with Toho to produce Varan. How did you come across that information? Because you're about as far back as I can trace it.
Well, I don't remember where I got it from, but I'm sure it came from either Ed Godziszewski or Steve Reifel in one of their books, probably, or maybe one of August Rigoni. I don't remember. Somebody before me put that out there. I'm just the only one who's written like a several hundred words on what the original shooting plan was and what the TV miniseries version was going to be. But yes, I don't think I dug that up. Somebody else did, but I don't remember who it was exactly. Like I said, probably Steve or Ed in one of their books.
Now, we talked about that the Japanese version is so-so, and the U.S. version basically does everything wrong that Godzilla King of the Monsters did right in terms of adaptation. But what is your favorite aspect of either version of the film?
Just Varan himself and his design, I think, is just such a wonderful design. I wish there were more Varan figures out there to purchase, and I think YMSF is one of the only ones that actually put him out there. And then there was kind of that oddly designed but cool Trendmasters Varan, which is really expensive, and I don't have one of those. But so he's just got a really nice design for a monster, and I think it's cool that Toho kind of combined Godzilla, Anguirus, and Rodan into one monster, and that he's a quadruped like Anguirus. He can walk in the bipedal stance like Godzilla, and then he can fly like Rodan. And that was the funny thing, is the way Toho advertised Varan was that he was going to be even cooler than Godzilla and Rodan, which of course he wasn't.
Now, Toho's next 4 science fiction films kind of avoided full-scale giant monsters. They had basically a cameo from Orochi no Yamata in The Three Treasures, but it wasn't until Mothra that they really did another giant monster movie. Do you feel like the lukewarm reception to Varan may have had something to do with that?
Yeah, and I feel like I read somewhere as well that the box office failure of Varan kind of cooled their jets a little bit on giant monsters.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the film would have been better received if they had done it as a planned theatrical release from the beginning, or do you think it was just kind of with what they had kind of doomed?
See, I'm someone I don't get real hung up on technical aspects of movies. I'm more about their writing, just like I think Legend of Dinosaurs is great from a writing perspective, and the effects for that movie just ruined it. So with Varan, I feel like from a technical standpoint, it was very well done as far as that suit went and the effects and all that. I think it just had a bad story. So um, I guess what I'd have to say is supposedly the story, Ken Kuronuma was told specifically to keep the story simple and straightforward, and he did. Because again, they just at the time they thought it was going to be a TV movie in America, so it didn't really have to be that great. So I mean, if they wrote it more like, let's say, Rodan or something, and used Varan's design, I think it could have been a great movie. It's just so simple, and the monster emerges from the lake and it destroys a city, and even the way they kill Varan at the end really isn't that interesting. So to me, if it had a rewrite, it might could be successful.
Right. And this is kind of interesting to me, just that it's Shinichi Sekizawa's first foray for Toho into this, and he ends up setting so much of the tone for the series going forward, and it's so unlike the rest of his work.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's pretty much the worst monster movie he ever wrote, so it's kind of a marvel that Toho gave him work after that. But
Yeah, no, just once again, John, we're so excited to have you on here. And we do a little thing after our interview that we play a game. It's a different game every episode. And before I knew I'd be able to get you to do the show, I had designed it around lost media featuring Varan. And since you literally wrote the book on that, I think you're going to absolutely annihilate this game, but we can play it whenever you're ready.
oh yeah, hopefully I can remember what I wrote in the book. So
All
hopefully.
right, so we'll take a quick break. I'll put in a little stinger here, and then we'll come back. For us, no time will have passed, but the listeners will have heard an ad.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this is an ad for Anchor. That's right, an ad for Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. I was super intimidated to start this podcast until I heard about Anchor, and there are a number of things that made me feel more at ease to begin. First of all, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms, including whatever one you're listening to. And you can make money from your podcast easily with no minimum listenership. All you do is enter your information, Anchor takes care of the rest. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. This is the mandatory call for action that I have to read out now, but it's true. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I've been Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this has been an ad for Anchor.
But the Navy commander would not heed their warning. He moved forward, ever searching, ever probing deeper and deeper, until it was too late. Varan rose from the depths slowly, unrelentingly, to wreak its vengeance on a civilization that wanted to know too much. Tumultuous, terrifying. Awesome, it will shock you to the core. Varan, the Unbelievable.
Welcome back once again to Record All Monsters. We're still here with John LeMay, author of the Big Book of Japanese Giant Monster Movies and Lost Films Fanzine, Kong Unmade, and apparently his best-selling book, Jaws Unmade. And we're playing a game called Varan the Unavailable.
I like
All
that.
right. So Varan is a cool-looking monster, as we've established, and I don't think we're the only people who think so. Despite only officially appearing in two movies, and then stock footage in a third, he's been considered for numerous projects in the Godzilla franchise. So many, in fact, that I have a hard time keeping them straight. So in our game today, I'll read the synopsis of a movie from the Godzilla franchise. Some never made it past the conceptual stage. and your job is to tell me if Varan was ever considered to appear in that movie. There will be no prizes, but there will also be no penalties. So, this first question is an easy one, and the listeners will probably get it too. Three guardian monsters rise up to protect Japan from Godzilla, who hasn't been seen in 50 years. The Gatango from Atragon is an 11th hour Deus Ex Machina which kills Godzilla after he murders the guardian monsters. Was Varan the Unbelievable considered for this film?
Yes, I think that one's pretty. Everybody knows that one by now. I think it was Varan and Anguirus and Baragon.
That's right. They were considered for the original version of what became Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack in 2001. And that's a softball. That's an easy one, but I've been accused of making these games too hard for the listeners and the guests in the past.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to open with a good, solid one, get everyone feeling good. And once again, I'm confident you will have all of these. You literally wrote the book on it. Godzilla and his offspring fight the monster of the end times in 1999. Little Godzilla learns how to use their atomic breath in the fight. The movie ends with a countdown to the year 2000. Was Varan the Unbelievable considered for this film?
Yes, allegedly, and I would like to take this as an opportunity to clarify that the alleged 1995 Godzilla versus Varan, there's no paper trail on that. That's one of those things where a Toho Studios employee told an English-speaking connection that was an idea, and they told somebody else, and then it got back to me. So it's more of an alleged thing, no paper trail, and it didn't pop up in Godzilla versus Destroya Perfection book, which is kind of odd if that was a project in consideration, but it does come from reliable sources in terms of through the grapevine.
That's interesting, because I'd seen that on Toho Kingdom too, and then it was at least mentioned in your book, so I figured it was a safe thing to bring up in the game. But right now you're 2 for 2, and you so far hold the record for success on the Record All Monsters game show. And I've only got 3 questions for you because the synopses are kind of long. So
Yeah.
Our last question is, the monsters Gigan, Megalon, and King Ghidorah, under the control of the alien Miko, who is a living brain, invade the Earth. Everyone is very concerned about airplanes. Scientists build a Godzilla-shaped tower in a place called Science Land. Godzilla and a monster buddy fight and win. Was Varan the Unbelievable considered for this film?
No, he wasn't.
That's correct. You got them all. You're the first one to get them all.
That was a good curveball, though.
That was the original concept for Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. the Space Monsters, Earth Defense Directive, and it was always Anguirus backing up Godzilla in that screenplay.
Can we talk about the one on the side, Return of King Ghidorah? Can we talk about that one?
Of course, go right ahead, go off. That's why you're here.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that was Robert's curveball. Is that the Godzilla versus the Space Monsters came from Takeshi Kimura, Kaoru Mabuchi. That was his screenplay, and then Sekizawa wrote a competing screenplay that had Ghidorah, Gigan, and some sort of new monster named Mogu. And they're the invading monsters from space, and for some weird reason, Sekizawa chose to have not Anguirus, but Rodan and Varan being Godzilla's backup in the story. I've always wondered why Sekizawa would have chosen Varan, other than possibly maybe he had a soft spot for Varan since that was the first monster film he worked on. I've just always wondered why Varan.
Yeah, I would wonder that too. I think Sekizawa, from what I've read, I was reading in the David Callett's book, The Critical History and Filmography of Godzilla, that Sekizawa was very aware of the level that the films were being perceived at the time and kind of wanted to harken back. And I guess he thought maybe having some classic monsters would do that. But yes, no, I tried to make it sound as close to The Return of King Ghidorah as possible.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're really happy to have been able to talk to you. Do you have any new books planned in the near future? Or?
I do, and it actually ties into Varan the Unbelievable. Hopefully by springtime, uh, 2021, I should have out a book called Editing Japanese Monsters, which is specifically about the alternate edits done to these films in other countries. And the first volume will be all the American edits. So, Godzilla King of the Monsters and Varan the Unbelievable will be discussed, and all the differences will be detailed. So it's a lot like those old articles, Godzilla in America by Robert Biondi and John Rocco Roberto, and then Toho in America by Brian Culver. It's like those, but just all of them finally put in a book.
That's wonderful. That sounds great. And you did writing Japanese monster movies not too long ago too, right?
Yeah, and so that, yeah, you're right. The two titles are similar because that was about the scripting process, and
Mhm.
it ties a lot into the Lost films. You could almost call it like a companion book because it's specifically about the films that were made, but just how different they were when they started out and how they evolved over time.
Right. Well, thank you once again. Is there anywhere our fans can find you online? You've got the Facebook page now, right?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. The Facebook page is mostly just for fun. I try at least 3 days out of the week to post some sort of Lost Films related trivia, and it is pretty heavy on Godzilla and Japanese stuff, but I try fairly often to deviate into other stuff like Hammer Horror or King Kong or just or genre Lost film type stuff. And then also, if you just type in my name in Amazon under books, which is John LeMay, and that's an LEMAY, you should be able to find my author page, and it'll have everything on it.
All right, and we'll link to those in our show notes. Thank you once again, John. And maybe we hope to have you on again in the future.
Oh, I'd love to come back. This was fun.
Great. Thank you so much.
Once again, I wanted to thank John LeMay for coming on and talking with us about Varan the Unbelievable and some of his books, particularly that Editing Japanese Monsters. That's out now. I got a copy. It's great. There's a link to that book specifically in our show notes, but there are also links to his Facebook page and his author page on Amazon. Once again, I want to thank Courtney as well for all of her technical help. Next week, we'll be taking a break. There won't be a mailbag or a quick look, but there will be something to promote or plug or preview Kongzillathon from the Podcasters Assemble. I'm participating in that. It's on the This Will Work Probably podcast network. I believe it's available on all your normal places. So the first episode of that would have been today, if you're listening to this on launch day. And then I'll be doing that for the next 8 weeks after. But there will still be Record All Monsters. There just won't be a mailbag or a quick look next week. The week after that, we'll be talking with Derek and Cook from Monster Kid Radio. And we're really excited about that. We had a great conversation. It was the longest interview I've ever done for the show. Derek and I had a great time talking, and it's going to be our longest episode ever. There was just too much good stuff. There were a few audio issues near the end. The software I was using caused some of our audio to overlap, and I couldn't separate it. But I'll keep working on that. I've been editing it all week. And let's see what else. The Rondos, we're hoping still to get nominated for a Rondo. If you can help with that, you want to email Taraco@AOL.com. That's TARACO at AOL.com. And there's two more things. One more thing. We talked about a giveaway last week. We were talking about doing a giveaway. And we're still talking about that. We hope to be able to do the giveaway sometime soon. We have the items. We want to do a first, second, and third prize. We have all 3 prizes. It's just a matter of the logistics. So once we get the logistics hammered out, we'll be able to get that giveaway started. I'm sorry about all the pauses. I'm recording this the night before we we put this episode out. I'm usually more on top of things. But that's where we stand right now. And once we get that, we'll announce it probably on all our social medias. We have a Letterboxd now. I started that recently. And we'll be going quick, like 1-sentence reviews for each movie on there. So, next week, Kongzillathon. Week after that, talking with Derek from Monster Kid Radio about the giant behemoth. So keep that in your eye line and remember that monsters are your friends. Adios. Bye.